Welcome back. Today we're looking at how generative AI is changing scientific research, from coding and bioinformatics to biomedical data analysis and multi-omics workflows. We're breaking down this major science study on AI-generated code and connecting it to new research in biomedicine, computational biology, and AI-accelerated data analysis. This science paper gives us an entirely new evidence base. It's real empirical measurements of how AI is actually being used and who it genuinely benefits, rather than relying on assumptions or hype or self-reported surveys. We'll also look at how AI is already influencing fields like spatial omics, cancer research, genomics, and digital pathology, and how these changes affect students, researchers, and early career scientists across research methods, coding, data science, and experimental analysis. So let's explore what the evidence really shows about AI in science, who gains, who doesn't, and how you can stay competitive and credible in an AI-driven research world. So figure 1 is a schematic of the machine learning pipeline that the researchers created to tell whether a piece of Python code was written by a human or by generative AI. They illustrate each key step. So in A, they build a ground truth dataset of human-written functions from before modern Gen A existed, and then use 2 LLMs, that's large language models, to create synthetic AI-written versions of those same functions. In B, they convert each function into a vector representation using what they call graph code BERT, which encodes tokens, comments, and data flow. In C, a neural network classifier is trained on these embeddings to label code as AI written versus human written. And in D, the classifier performs extremely well, an area under the curve of 0.96. That's really good. And it's applied to millions of real GitHub functions from 2019 to 2024. So this is the foundation of the entire paper. It's the first large-scale systematic method to actually measure who is using Gen AI to code rather than asking people in surveys. So moving on to figure 2, the first data of the paper, this shows us trends in how much Python code across major countries is being generated by AI between 2019 to 2024. And the trend here is pretty clear. In A, we see the US trajectory. Adoption spikes sharply after each major AI release. That's GitHub Copilot Preview, ChatGPT, and GPT-4. By the end of 2024, 29% of Python functions in the US were AI generated. Then in B, we see a cross-country comparison. France and Germany catch up closely at 23 to 24%. India accelerates rapidly, reaching 20%, while China and Russia lag significantly behind. This shows that Gen AI use is a global phenomenon and growing fast, but with uneven access and uptake, which parallels what we see in other emerging technologies. Figure 3 aims to show us who uses Gen AI and who benefits. It's a breakdown of who is using this AI-assisted coding and how it affects productivity. In A, we see that there's no difference between men and women in Gen AI adoption rates within the US. And in B, perhaps unsurprisingly, we see that early career developers use Gen AI the most, about 37% of their code versus 27% for senior developers. In C, we see that overall, Gen AI is associated with more comment activity, more multi-file comments, more new library imports, and more experimentation with new combinations of libraries. But in D, we see that these productivity and exploration gains really only occur in senior developers. Early career developers, in contrast, show no measurable benefit, despite using AI more often. This is the headline result. Gen AI actually widens skill gaps instead of how we may have hoped it was closing them. If, like me, you're in biomedicine and have to use a bit of coding but aren't an expert, you really fit into this kind of early career bracket, and you may have hoped, like I think I hope, as a PI of a team of active researchers and of students who want to use coding to get better at oncology, immunology, biomedical research, may hope that this Gen AI ability to help us to code was actually closing that skill gap. But it seems maybe not. So it seems like students are overusing AI without developing the foundational skills, which I suppose is a fear that we were all warned about. And unsurprisingly, we see that senior researchers are better positioned to judge, correct, and leverage AI output. The long-term career implications for students and researchers at the early stage who rely too heavily on generational tools are as yet unknown, but this is certainly a bit of a cautionary tale, I would suggest. Here, the authors argue that discussions about AI transforming work have outpaced our ability to measure what people are actually doing. Surveys and experiments tell us something, but they suffer from underreporting because people don't want to admit they used AI, inconsistent sampling across countries, short observation windows, and overall this creates uncertainty, especially for policymakers and educators, about how AI is really affecting productivity and careers. The paper's contribution is to show that digital traces, or code comets, can be used to track AI adoption and intensity over time, something far more objective and granular. Gen AI diffuses fast, but unevenly. The authors emphasize that generative AI is spreading quickly across countries, firms, and developers, but not evenly. The US leads, but is losing ground as Europe and India catch up. China and Russia lag, partly because of access restrictions. So, for example, OpenAI and Anthropic blocking access, VPN limitations, censorship, and so forth. This global unevenness mirrors adoption patterns for earlier general purpose technologies and suggests that existing inequalities could actually widen. Although Gen AI clearly boosts output and accelerates experimentation, these gains only show up in senior level developers. Senior developers can better interpret, debug, and integrate AI-generated code. They can reallocate time from coordination to actual coding. In contrast, early career developers use AI more but see no measurable benefit. This challenges the narrative that AI will level the playing field. It might do the opposite. The authors suggest that early career developers may not benefit. Juniors may rely on AI without understanding the underlying logic, making them less able to detect errors. They may not have the domain knowledge needed to choose useful prompts or evaluate outputs. And AI may encourage superficial learning and reduce opportunities to acquire foundational skills. The result is an emerging productivity gap tied directly to experience, not access. The findings raise concerns about future career trajectory for early career workers. If juniors don't gain skills as effectively because AI fills in the gaps, then they may struggle to advance into senior roles. This may create a missing middle in the workforce, few new experts being trained. For educators like me, this has major implications. The need to emphasize deep understanding, error spotting, and methodological skills in a world where AI can do the typing. The authors also highlight that generative AI affects what developers do, not just how fast they do it. Developers incorporate more new libraries. They explore new combinations of tools, a proxy for innovation. Gen AI may shift time away from communication and management tasks towards hands-on problem solving. This mirrors shifts seen after previous technological breakthroughs, like the transition from managerial to technical tasks. They point out that the economic value of Gen AI is large, but it's hard to pin down. Productivity increases of around 3.6%, which is their conservative estimate, translating to tens of billions of dollars of additional value in the US alone. But the authors note these are lower bounds due to measurement error. Other studies suggest much larger effects of 6 to 15%. And general equilibrium dynamics, for example, cheaper code lowering wages, complicate things. Overall, Gen AI is extremely valuable, of course, but the distribution of that value is uneven and evolving. Of course, there's limitations here. The authors openly acknowledge constraints. They study only Python and only open source code. GitHub is not equally dominant in all countries. So, for example, China uses Gitee. The analysis doesn't yet evaluate code quality or long-term maintenance, which are, of course, key to understand the bigger picture here. They emphasize the need for new metrics and datasets, particularly around collaboration, code review, and long-term maintainability. So now that we've looked at how generative AI is changing the way software developers work, especially the really striking difference between early career users and experienced developers, Let's zoom out, because although this study focuses on coding, the exact same dynamics are now playing out across biomedical research, clinical science, and even graduate medical education. I'm looking at you, students. Honestly, for those of us working in things like spatial omics, cancer biology, bioinformatics, computational immunology, the list goes on, these findings should feel eerily familiar. So firstly, adoption of generative AI is already widespread in biomedical research. A major recent report looked specifically at how biomedical researchers are adopting generative AI tools. This wasn't a generic academic survey. It focused directly on biomedicine. It found that biomedical scientists are already using Gen AI for everything from literature reviews and coding pipelines to experimental planning and dataset summarization. Crucially, the authors emphasise that biomedicine is uniquely sensitive to errors because mistakes don't just create broken code, they can mislead experiments or, downstream, even affect patient care. So just like in the coding world, we're seeing rapid, enthusiastic uptake, but also a growing recognition that expertise matters more than ever. Secondly, Gen AI massively accelerates data analysis, even for junior trainees. Another recent study, this time in a biomedical context, found that Gen AI could build analytical code for medical datasets in minutes, compared with months of work by human teams. And certainly from my own research team, I can say that we're seeing the same. The wild part is that a project team composed of a master's student and a high school student was able to build valid predictive models for preterm birth because Gen AI generated the code and analytical pipeline for them. This is exactly the same pattern we saw in the science paper. Gen AI increases speed, but it doesn't magically confer understanding, and that can widen skill gaps between juniors and experienced researchers. At the same time, AI is becoming deeply embedded in the biomedical research ecosystem. Reviews in both Cell and Nature both show that generative AI isn't just a side tool. It's becoming a core component of modern biomedical research. For example, Gen AI is now transforming pathology image interpretation, genomics and proteomics, multimodal integration for cancer diagnosis, and predictive modeling across clinical datasets. And I can agree that these are all topics that we're using Gen AI for amongst my own research projects and collaborations. Industry groups and research institutions are even building domain-specific biomedical LLMs, trained on curated experimental and clinical data, specifically to support genomic analysis and cancer prediction workflows. This is incredibly exciting, but it also raises the same foundational questions that we saw in this coding paper. Ethical and integrity risks mirror those in software development, but with higher stakes. A 2025 integrity review warns that Gen AI introduces issues across the entire research lifecycle. We see hallucinated data and references, lack of transparency, bias in training datasets, privacy violations, and risks of researchers outsourcing too much of the intellectual work. Again, we see a mirror of this science paper's findings. Novices tend to lean on AI heavily, sometimes too heavily, and may not recognize when the output is wrong. In biomedicine, that could mean flawed analyses, misinterpreted omics datasets, or experimental designs built on hallucinated assumptions. Finally, there are real biosecurity and safety concerns unique to the life sciences. Another recent prospective paper warns that Gen AI in biosciences can lower the barrier for creating synthetic proteins, toxins, or other potentially harmful biological designs, even unintentionally. This is not the case in software engineering, where bad code at worst breaks an app. In biomedicine, lowering the barrier to powerful biological design tools raises ethical, regulatory, and safety issues that junior researchers may not be equipped to navigate. So when we put all of this together, the coding study, the biomedical adoption studies, the acceleration of analysis, the ethical concerns, and the biosecurity risks, a very consistent picture emerges. Gen AI is a multiplier. It amplifies capability, but only when you already have strong foundational knowledge. This is why the science paper found that senior developers benefit from Gen AI, while early career developers see little improvement despite heavier use. And the exact same dynamic is happening in biomedical research. For students, early career scientists, anyone building their skill set, AI can accelerate your work, but it cannot replace the process of learning. If you skip that, Gen AI won't make you faster, it'll just make your mistakes faster. And for senior researchers, PIs like me, and experienced analysts, AI has the potential to massively improve productivity, expand the range of analyses we can tackle, and free up time for creative scientific thinking, if we use it responsibly. If you're a student writing an exam answer, essay, or dissertation section about AI in science, research skills, or digital transformation, this science paper and the related biomedical papers we've discussed are absolute gold. Here's how to use them effectively. Firstly, use the science paper as a model of how AI affects skill development. You can cite the science study to make a strong argument about who benefits from generative AI and why. It shows that AI boosts productivity only for experienced developers, while early career users gain little despite higher usage rates. This gives you a perfect evidence-based point. AI does not automatically close skill gaps, it can widen them. You can use this when discussing training and education, digital literacy, automation and workforce inequality, or really just to think about your own learning habits. Secondly, in essays about AI in biomedicine, bioinformatics, clinical research, or healthcare innovation, you can reference the Biomedical AI adoption reports. For example, biomedical researchers are already using Gen AI for experimental planning, lit reviews, and data analysis. Gen AI can analyze medical datasets much faster than human teams, sometimes in minutes. You can use these if you want to argue that AI is transforming scientific workflows and not just coding. But if you get an exam question or piece of coursework about ethics, integrity, or risk, you can cite the research integrity review I mentioned, showing issues like hallucinations, bias, and transparency problems across the research lifecycle. You can reference biosecurity concerns from bioscience AI papers, showing that Gen AI can lower barriers to designing harmful biological constructs. This makes your answers look mature and nuanced. For questions about multiomics, genomics, proteomics, or computational biology, you can use these large reviews that show Gen AI enables sequence design, protein engineering, structural prediction, and multiomics integration. AI is transforming cancer detection and multimodal analysis in bioinformatics. These papers help show the cutting edge of biological data science, showing that you're keeping up with the literature and latest trends. I would say most importantly, you can use all of these papers to demonstrate the ability to think critically in your exams or your coursework. This gives you an opportunity for faster analysis, expanded innovation, and better modelling, but it comes with a risk. The widening skill gaps, over-reliance on AI, hallucinations, and ethical concerns. This will give you a balanced, evidence-based answer, which is something that examiners like me love. So if you're writing an assignment or sitting an exam on AI in science, don't just talk about ChatGPT in general terms. Anchor your arguments with these specific studies. They give you solid data, cross-disciplinary examples, and critical perspectives that will take your answers from good to distinction level. Let's talk honestly. For PhD students and postdocs, these papers should ring alarm bells. Not because AI is coming for your job, but because of how it changes the skill landscape you're training for. AI helps people who already have deep expertise, not those who are still developing it. The science study that we discussed today shows that senior developers benefited from Gen AI, gaining productivity and expanding into new technical domains, while early career developers, despite using AI more, benefited the least. This is directly relevant to scientific training. If you already understand coding, statistics, genomics, or spatial omics workflows, AI accelerates you. If you don't yet understand those functions or foundations, AI won't compensate, and it may even mask gaps that you urgently need to fill. This mirrors what we see in biomedical research surveys, where AI is already being used to plan experiments, summarize literature, and even analyze data. But misuse risks significant scientific errors. Collective evidence shows us that AI lets juniors do things quickly, but not necessarily correctly. The UCSF Wayne State study showed that even a master's student and a high school student could build a prediction model using AI-generated analysis pipelines. Impressive? Yeah, but also risky because speed is not the same as understanding. For PhD students and postdocs, this raises a real concern. If AI makes it too easy to produce code or analysis, you may progress through a project without learning the reasoning behind the methods, and that will catch up with you later. In biomedicine, the stakes are even higher. Biomedical AI reports emphasize that Gen AI can introduce hallucinated data or references, incorrect analytical steps, privacy violations, dangerous biological outputs, and biased or unsafe interpretations. I can certainly say that in my own research group, we are frequently seeing hallucinated data. We're frequently seeing incorrect and analytical steps. This is something that for sure I can personally attest to. These are not nice to fix later problems. They can mislead an experiment, invalidate a data set, or in the clinical settings, horrifyingly, they could potentially cause harm. This is why over-reliance on AI is especially dangerous for early career scientists. Gen AI widens, not shrinks the skill gap. And this is honestly just so disappointing to read, particularly as someone who leads biomedical research where we collaborate with coding experts, but we're not experts ourselves. I, for one, really hoped that it would help to narrow the skill gap. And I do think that perhaps in teams like mine, where we do have domain relevant experience in things like spatial transcriptomics, in the clinical questions being asked, in the wet lab side of the workflows, hopefully we are bringing enough knowledge to the table that maybe we make less mistakes with AI, but mistakes really are still there. Across both coding and biomedical research, the pattern is the same. Experts leverage AI to innovate faster. Novices rely on AI to fill gaps, but that reliance stops them developing the expertise needed to one day become experts themselves. Experts in adjacent fields who are good at data analysis, but only beginners at coding, people like us, well, we're somewhere in the middle, and I'm not sure the evidence is there yet to show whether this is going to be mainly benefit or mainly a cautionary tale for us. I think in all likelihood, it's a balance and a bit of both. But the real cautionary tale is that if AI is doing the thinking for you now, you may struggle to become the person who can think independently later, and senior scientists will notice the difference. AI is transforming research, but it's not replacing training. All the biomedical reviews agree that AI is rapidly reshaping genomics, proteomics, multiomics, and biomedical analysis. But they also highlight a lack of interpretability, model bias, data quality issues, and the need for strong foundational knowledge to use AI output responsibly. For trainees, this means you must be able to evaluate AI output, not just generate it. So yeah, these papers are a cautionary tale for PhD students and postdocs. Like I said, it's not that AI will replace you necessarily, but there is a fear there that AI will expose the difference between people who truly understand their field and people who are coasting on autocomplete. Gen AI is a multiplier. If you have deep expertise, it amplifies your ability. If you don't, it amplifies your weaknesses. So if you are in training, use AI, but use it as a microscope, not a crutch. Let it help you see more, do more, and explore more, but make sure you are still the scientist doing the thinking. Thanks for watching. If this deep dive helped you to rethink how Gen AI is shaping research from coding and data analysis through to biomedical science, then I hope you'll take these insights back to your own work. Whether you're a student building core skills or a researcher navigating an AI-accelerated lab environment, staying critical, curious, and evidence-driven has never mattered more. If you want more videos on biomedical research and research skills and the realities of staying relevant in this AI-enabled world, then feel free to subscribe. And if you want, you can drop some questions in the comments. I'm always happy to dig deeper. Do you want more AI videos or stick to cancer, immunology, spatial omics? Let me know. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.